one day my vice president, she asked me, "What would you do with a blogger?" And I said, "A blogger? Usually the creative team works with that on the website." I said, let me think." So I got back to her and I said, "Well, what if I have a vlogger?" And she said, "Go on." And so I said, "Well, think of it as our own like influencer in-house or a travel host, so who's constantly like everyone in the audience recognizes this person versus just having like, voiceovers. It's they know her face, they understand who she is, and everyone looks forward to seeing this face."
This is Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, your essential resource for mastering the unique challenges of social media marketing in the hospitality industry authentically. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and each episode we dive deep into the real issues, from evolving guest expectations to standout social campaigns, sharing insights and strategies you can put to work. Let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, where we're digging into the challenges, successes, and stories of social media and community professionals in the industry, just like you. Subscribe to gain valuable insights that you'll be able to apply to your own work and social presence from each and every episode. Now, social media management for one hospitality brand can feel like a full-time job because it is. But what happens when your responsibilities multiply across not just two or three, but how about seven distinct hotel properties? The complexity increases exponentially. You're suddenly juggling different target audiences, unique selling points, varying aesthetics, and distinct brand voices, all while trying to maintain consistency, quality, and engagement across every platform. Today's guest knows these challenges intimately and has developed a framework that not only works, it excels. Faye Albana transitioned from education to become the social media manager at Rosen Hotels and Resorts, where she oversees social media for seven distinct properties while managing a team of 13 associates. Her strategic approach has transformed Rosen's social presence and convinced even the most skeptical stakeholders of social media's value to their hospitality business. Hey, Faye, welcome to the show.
Hey Mike, thanks so much for having me today.
Glad you could join me. I wonder if you could start by just giving us a snapshot of the scope of what you manage, how many distinct brands, platforms, and what type of content volume are we talking about?
Absolutely. So here at Rosen Hotels and Resorts, we're based in Orlando, Florida, and we have 7 hotels, which are all in Orlando in the tourist district. And Mr. Harris Rosen, our former CEO and founder of Rosen Hotels and Resorts, is also very passionate in giving back to the community. So on top of our 7 hotels, we also have a Rosen Aquatic and Fitness Center, which was formerly the YMCA. And we also have 2 preschools in underserved communities in the Orlando area. So on top of 7 hotels, we also cover the social media for the 2 preschools and the aquatic and fitness center. So I have a large team, as you mentioned, where each of the individual hotels, our corporate page, our aquatic and fitness center page, have their own Instagram and Facebook pages. Now, with our preschools, we also use a Facebook page of Rosen Gives Back, where we feature some of those content pieces. So, to answer your question, the volume is quite high. We have a formula here at Rosen where we do about 4 to 5 static posts and 2 reels per page per account, and of course having a mixture of 6 to 12 stories going out 7 days a week. So we have a high volume here at Rosen Hotels and Resorts, and we're very proud of that.
That is a lot. And just to give some folks some context, you were telling me before we started recording that you can actually see the new Universal Park Epic being built. It's that close to where you're located.
Yes, that is correct. One of our main hotels, the Rosen Shingle Creek property, our golf course is directly across, probably less than 30 meters across of one of the entrance signs currently at Epic Universe. And our other 2 convention properties are less than 2 miles away from that. So we have lots of rooms for when you like to come to Orlando for Epic Universe.
That's one of the things I love about this show, these little perks. I get to learn so much about terrific properties. The last interview, we were talking with someone who was running these glamping resorts out in the west, like around the Grand Canyon and up in Utah. And here now, I've just learned about my next hotel stay when I bring my kids
Yeah.
to Universal. So that's awesome. Now, let's talk about the work that you're doing, because when you first took on this responsibility, managing multiple hotel properties on social media, what was your biggest, like, "Oh, no," moment, and how did you address it?
Yes. So there's actually more than one, but I'll stick to one. I guess my biggest oh no was the type of content that was being pushed out on social. Social media is still an ever changing industry, and for some people, they just think, it's just a simple photo. But what we have to realize is like, just like how Reels became a new feature. And for most people, and I think other managers would agree, Reels are the best way to get out there outside of our current audience. So when I first came on board, I would reach out to some of the properties and say, okay, we're going to promote some of the new F&B menu items. And, I was told, well, we have some of those photos in the repository. So then I went to the Vault repository of our content, and there was, I would say, content from like 2007, 2009, and I started 2021. And I was like, we cannot use that on social media. So for me, that was probably my biggest oh no is we have to take high quality content, use our current iPhones at the time and Sony, and really just up our quality game with our content. So that was probably my biggest oh no. This has to change here. Is not
Yeah,
recycling old content.
no, that makes complete sense. I know for a lot of brands, recycling content makes a lot of sense, but when you're in this industry, in the location that you're in,
Mhm.
it's probably not too many reasons to recycle content. Like you
Right.
said, all you gotta do is walk outside with an iPhone, and you're creating wonderful content for social media.
100%. And, to compete with our other competitors or even like the newer concepts, like I said, across the street from us, we have to make sure that we not only blend in quality wise, but stand out in our own way. So, reusing old content does nothing for us. And honestly, we all know that apps really compress that quality if you're not up to the standard that they require. So, that was a big change. And I'm happy to say that once I explained that, everything was great and everyone was on board, and we completely, like, deleted the library and started a whole new library of our own content.
Love it. And you're speaking to a point that I know a lot of folks have raised in the past, which is that sometimes when they go to these old stakeholders and they wanna make a change, they get a lot of pushback.
Right,
I'm glad to hear that your changes were accepted. Now, a moment ago, you talked about a framework. I'd love if you could expand on that. I know you use it to organize your content across multiple properties. How
right.
are you keeping everything straight without duplicating efforts or missing opportunities?
Absolutely. So we use a OneDrive here at Rosen, and that has helped us so much because what I do is I create a within our social media drive, I have a yearly drive. So I have a 2025 drive, for example, and within that, I have every property title. So as Mr. Rosen opened each hotel, he named it R1, R2, all the way to R7. So that's how we identify our properties internally. So I have a folder for R1, and then within that, it dissects into like the hotel elements of food and beverage, and then that dissects into outlet names. So when I tell you it's organized, it's almost like when you have a Pinterest board and you think just putting food is okay, but then you go into more depth of titles. So that's how we have our content organized, but the team, we have a process where once we upload it to our computer, we only drop in the edited content. So we really filter out the 200 pictures we took at Universal and what, core 40 are we going to actually use and replenish that. So that's part of our training process of when we have new hires. So that's what keeps us really organized. And then with Agora Pulse that we use to schedule our content, it's really easy for us to just upload from our shared drive because it's edited, it's ready to go, and we go from there. So that's how we organize that. And of course, same thing with our real content. We have specific albums on our iPhone that we use for like hotel elements. So it's easy for us or my coordinators when they're doing any reels and editing on their phones. They just go straight to the album, find the food and beverage outlet they're doing a content piece on, and everything's edited and ready to go in their albums. So we all know, and I say this with a laugh because I think everyone on social media knows there's a million tabs, a million albums, and it's so right about that. But I always say this and stress it in my interview process as well. Organization is so important. I actually asked that in an interview. How do you stay organized? How do you stay on top of deadlines? Because social media is like handing someone a bin of small Lego pieces and you have to rebuild every day. And there's so many moving parts. So organization is key, and that's how my team stays organized.
That is a great philosophy, particularly about the hiring. part because you're right. There's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of skill that goes into
Mhm.
social media management, but there's some core things, and one of them is being organized. Communications, another one.
For sure.
So those are really valuable assets to focus on. So you've got R1 through R7. You've
Right.
got other brands. How are you juggling their distinct brand voices, their own aesthetic styles, while still ensuring that they're all part of the umbrella Rosen Hotels and Resorts?
Absolutely. So I'm very fortunate to where we have like established very strong relationships with each of the properties. We are fully on site. So we go to the properties on a daily, weekly basis. And having this relationship with the general manager, the assistant general manager, food and beverage director, director of sales and marketing, that has really helped form my team's mentality of like mindset. How do we represent the brand through their eyes, because we're in an ops building, operations building, and we just visit. But they know the clients, they know our guests, they understand what they're selling in sales, they understand how to, get on these site visits, how to get these big meeting groups to come here, and how do we have a consistent brand voice? So us really being involved with the hotel team has helped with that consistency. And honestly, every even though we're like you said, all under the Rose umbrella, we all have different brand aesthetics. Each hotel has different offerings. I will say of our 7, 4 of them are what we call our leisure properties. They're more of our affordable hotels. They have similar branding, so that helps, but they all have a different story to tell and they all have different elements to offer our guests and amenities. And 3 of the 4 of those in properties of leisures are Universal Hotel partners. Whereas one that's closer to Disney is a Disney-friendly neighbor hotel. So even though they might have similar looks and branding, they still have different offerings that we have to like hone in and represent that on our social media presence. So I think having that relationship and consistent communication is how we stay consistent.
That is huge. That harkens all the way back to a conversation in our very first episode with MGM Grand in Las Vegas, because he was making the exact same point. Even though he might be working remotely or in an office building as part of like the ops like you talked about,
Right.
going into the actual properties and talking to the concierges and the chefs and
Mhm.
everybody else and getting to understand them, their voices, their roles, what they're seeing and hearing from the customers is super important. It helps inform everything else that we're doing when it comes to social media management and communication. Let's talk
Right.
about your team,
Mhm.
because 13 people is a lot.
Yes.
I think 5 or 6 is probably the most I've ever personally managed. How have you organized this team to manage all this complexity? Are there any roles that have proven particularly essential?
Yes. I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you, but when I first started, there was only 3 coordinators in 2021, and we've tripled that, almost quadrupled, really. So for me, what's been essential is I think once we started getting more of our higher executives and our hotel management teams really seeing the value of our social media presence, and really just kind of testing the waters with like certain properties that I came when I first got here, I started seeing and hearing a lot of, "Ooh, what's going on over there? Oh, I would love for you to do that to my property." So that demand started happening. And with that came a lot more people's buy-ins that helped us get more people on board, because once we heard well, I want this property or my page to have more of a stronger presence. I'm like, well, I need more people to do that. So that's kind of how we expanded that, the coordinator role. And then one day my vice president, she asked me, what would you do with a blogger? And I said, a blogger? Usually the creative team works with that on the website. I said, let me think. So I got back to her and I said, well, what if I have a vlogger? And she said, go on. And so I said, well, think of it as our own like influencer in-house or a travel host, so who's constantly like everyone in the audience recognizes this person versus just having like, voiceovers. It's they know her face, they understand who she is, and everyone looks forward to seeing this face. Mr. Rosen's always been the face of the company, but on a social standpoint, someone who's like getting everyone excited to come to Epic or, stay at our properties. So she said, okay, put something together. So I put a job description, I kind of storyboarded some samples, and we went for it and we got it approved. And here we are about a year and a half later with the role being so successful. And so to me, That's something that I'm very proud of because no other hotel or really any other company in Orlando has their own vlogger. Sure, we also still partner with influencers and whatnot, but we've created this role and no one else is doing that right now. So to me, that's been an essential piece. And it's interesting because when we do our analytic reports every month and semi and monthly and quarterly and semi-annually, when we do our best, actually Agora is great for this. You do like the best performing post, right, for the month, and they show the top 6, 2 to 3 every month have been vlogs. And that's been a great way to show the ROI and prove this is why people are booking. They're even telling and talking to her saying, "Hey Amber, love this. Can you do a video on this?" which has triggered more content ideas. So I know I went further to answer your question, but really all roles have been so essential, but it's been wonderful to see the growth and now more people wanting a piece of the cake, if you will.
Love the idea of a vlogger. That is fantastic. I think any brand, whether you're a hotel or just some other property, anything like that,
Right.
have somebody dedicated to creating video content like that. Folks, we're talking with Faye Albana about a challenge many social media pros in this industry know all too well, juggling multiple brands. In a moment, we're going to get into content creation. But first, let's make sure you've got a tool in place to help you measure success.
Actually can't say enough great things about the reporting with Agora Pulse. I feel like that is my job security every month. My clients aren't that active on social media, which is why they have me manage their profiles for them. And when they get that report, it verifies that they're making a good investment.
The metrics downloads are so simple and easy to read, and it really helps me show where we are doing things right on social and where we need to improve.
So I think one of the main reasons why we decided to move to Agora Pulse is because it's a more comprehensive, integrated tool for all of our marketing needs. So rather than what we have had to do historically with Sprout, which is use certain parts of that platform that work really well and then supplement it with other outside tools, by moving to Agora Pulse, we were able to keep all of that into one technology platform, which is not only a time saver, but it also makes sure that our analytics and all of our reporting's on point because we're pulling all from the same source.
It's a really great platform for agencies. It makes it really easy to manage, but gives me really, really, really robust information that actually helps me develop better strategies for my clients and better plans of action.
So, Faye, I know content creation at this level can be a logistical nightmare. Other than hiring a full time video creator, what systems have you put in place to ensure that you're capturing fresh content for all these properties all the time?
Absolutely. So I have a very, I guess most people might say, "Wow, that's pretty impressive that you don't repeat content," but I take content very seriously where I am a firm believer of getting fresh content, and if I do recycle a piece of content, it might be used in a story versus, like, on the grid repeated. So for me, like I mentioned earlier, we have a 4 to 5 static post expectation and reels. Our reels are never repurposed, which we can look at one day, maybe saying, okay, it's been about a year, let's bring it back, especially if it was successful. But right now, our expectation is having our reels being something new and fresh, especially with what's new and out there. For example, with Epic opening up in a month from next week, we are working on Epic content, doing a countdown 1 month away. So that's not something we might do again, in a few months. So that's something that we're constantly trying to change and stay up to speed with trends and what's trendy currently. Same with static posts. I think as you know, social media is constantly ever changing, and what's popular one day is not popular the next year, but carousels are back to being popular. So we try to, when we're doing something for Earth Day coming up, we have so much content. And I always tell the team the properties might not change, but how we present the content and the property should change. So we try to put in different subjects in the photos and maybe different angles that we haven't done before, using different props. So it is challenging, I will say, to constantly have new content of properties that might not have new features, a new pool, a new this, but how we place items in front of it, whether it's a suitcase or a model, and this, a room key, which if you scroll through our pages, you will see as well. those are our ways of making new content look different, but I am a stickler about it has to be fresh and different.
I love that. So you're creating multiple static posts and you're creating reels. So you got vertical video content. Now, are you also using those same posts on multiple channels or are you creating new content for each channel? Like if you've got a vertical video, are you showing it to Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, or how are you doing that?
Right, that's a great question. So, we've always done the reels on Instagram. We have last year tested it out to where the reels weren't really performing as high on Facebook for our convention properties as they were the leisure properties. So we've been consistent with posting reels on both platforms for the 4 of the 7 leisures, but this year we're like, "Let's take a different approach on it. Let's listen to what our audience is saying on Facebook." And we also have like a 3 status update, formula on Facebook. And so we actually decided to one day was like, you know what? Let's just ask them what kind of content do they want to see on Facebook? What video tours do they want to see? So once we started doing that and really listening to the audience, we're like, oh, maybe they'll watch the videos if we do what they want, which obviously within brand guidelines and what our goals and mission and objectives and KPI goals were. So once we started really like honing in on that, that's when the video reels started performing well and having that engagement on the convention. So we have differentiated the content, but one thing we notice is anything informative and like savable, something they want to save, bookmark, that's been consistent across both platforms. But what we also post on our TikTok, which we only have one corporate handle on TikTok and one on Threads, that content is completely different from Facebook and Instagram. Sometimes we might sprinkle our successful reels on Instagram that can be like, go I always say like, "Can you join the stream or are you standing like, you're getting pushed to the rocks? Like, how is it gonna go when we post it on TikTok?" And for us, our TikTok is completely different because there's a little bit more on the edgy side, right? And it's you're doing like the fun trends and all that, but my team also knows we have to stick within what our branding is. Is this something that is going to, jeopardize our reputation as a brand? So we have to be cautious about that, but it's definitely more on the living on the edge side of our content.
Love it. What a fantastic approach. I love that you really thought this through. So that's fantastic. You mentioned a couple tools earlier. Are there any of the tools or those tools that have become just indispensable in your workflow to try to manage and juggle all these different brands and platforms?
Yeah, so of course we love using Agora for many of its tools. And social listening, I know I haven't hit on that, but that's been a huge tool from Agora that we've really used and has helped us not only engage and get new potential followers because they're like, oh, you see me talking about you, like, and then we start engaging with them, but also for content ideas. So for me, Agora has so many tools, and then also we use Microsoft Planner for our organization, our tasks. That's something that my team uses heavily. We also use Microsoft Forms. That's actually how my team submits their real ideas to me every Friday. We use that to where they have like a system we have a system in place where they talk in depth about what their vision is, what the tools they need, who they're communicating at the hotels, and I approve that and then they execute it the next week and a half. So we have a lot of system and tools in place. We also like to use Canva a lot as well. We use Adobe products. Those all of those programs help us with our workflow.
Tell me about that real process a little bit more, because that sounds really interesting. So on Friday, your associates have to have one idea. How many ideas that they have to submit
Two
to you per
ideas.
person? Two ideas. Okay. And then you get back to them by what, by Monday?
No, I mean, so we have a 10 a.m. deadline on Friday morning for it to be submitted, and then I usually have it sent back to them within the next couple hours. That way they could, start filming. And so let's say it's approved or, tweaked on Friday, have that discussion. They have technically Friday afternoon until the following Thursday to film, edit and all of that. And then they have it drafted with the caption, with the tags, everything, and then on Thursday is where I call it my real approval day, and I approve it, but it doesn't get posted till the following week. So it's like a 2-week ahead process, but I found it more helpful. It's really their storyboard, if you will, And it helps me also like do the research of opening up their current page and seeing, okay, you did a food and beverage reel on this day, like, there's at least 2 weeks of a gap until you hit it again, so there's not too much, repeating happening. And then we also, like I said, look at what's happening now. Next week is a month away from Epic opening, so we have so many things to look at, but this organized form helps me stay on top of the 30 videos that I'm approving every week.
Yeah. So for folks who are listening who, they've been feeling overwhelmed, maybe in their own practice or just listening to you about the sheer volume of content that has to go out, you put these processes in place and
Yep,
it helps you keep on top of everything and manage it and make sure that every single week you've got that right content going out because it was approved 2 weeks ago. And then the
right.
previous week it was actually filmed and edited. So that way, when it comes down to this week, the stuff's ready to go. Love that.
Yep.
Now, I'm wondering finally, how do you measure the actual business impact of all of this across all these social profiles, multiple properties? I know it's a challenge for hospitality because typically we're not driving measurable traffic. Are there different KPIs for different brands? How are you sorting all that out?
Right. That's a great question. And a question I get often is, how do I prove the ROI? And I'm going to be honest, I'm still trying to figure it out because it's not easy in social organic social to constantly prove that someone from our video just booked a stay at, one of our properties. Now, we have tried, of course, different methods to try to prove that, which helps us. So, for example, we have holiday buffets. So, for Easter, we have 4 of the 7 properties that have extravagant buffets that are wonderful. You should check it out.
Mhm.
And so, with that, when we promote it on social, we have unique links that our creative and web team has helped us create for tracking. Okay, this many clicks came from Instagram, this many clicks came from Facebook. So that has helped us when that part. Now, also what we try to do is, when we have a campaign running outside of the unique links, we might have like, okay, this is only a promo from social media. So we have a teppanyaki restaurant where we had posted before on that hotel page, okay, this is a special for just social media. So if you show the hostess this, you get this type of deal. So those are other proven ways we've been trying to prove the ROI. But till this day, I still can't find one person who could say this is exactly how many people came from social. And I challenge, when I'm challenged that question, I also say it back. How do you prove that this billboard or this, article in this magazine brought people to our hotel? I think it's also important to remember that having a strong social media presence is meant for the brand awareness in hopes that we can have an ROI. And when we do and we can prove it, it's wonderful. But those are the two main ways that my team has been able to, outside of the comments that might say, well, I just booked because of this video. Oh, and trust me, Mike, we screenshot and share that with our high stakeholders because that is my ROI that I can prove, from the content.
That makes complete sense. We've got another podcast all about retail. It's so much more straightforward in most retail. They can share direct links to products in posts and comments in direct messages, and they can track it all. Hospitality, that is not the case. That has certainly been a recurring theme every time I ask that question because it's almost entirely brand awareness, community building.
Right.
I'm learning about Rosen right now. So spring break 2026, if I go to Florida from
Yes,
St. Louis and I book a stay at Rosen, it'll be because we had this conversation. No way will that show up anywhere
for
on
sure.
my booking. No one would know that.
Right.
So it makes complete sense. But you offered a couple of really great pieces of advice there for folks who hadn't really thought about, oh, you know what? If I do a social only promotion, then we know. So that's fantastic. In fact, you've been absolutely amazing. This has been such a fun interview. For folks who want to know more about you or your properties, where should they go?
I'm active on LinkedIn for if anyone wants to see me on LinkedIn, I'm Faye Albana. And then, of course, our social channels, you can definitely search Rosen Hotels. And I always suggest going to our website, rosenhotels.com, and then you'll see a breakdown of every hotel. And every hotel has their own website, which leads you to their individual social channels. But Rosen Hotels is our main pages there. And I really appreciate you bringing me on today, Mike. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And sometimes hearing myself say it out loud, I'm like, wow, we really do a good job. And sometimes I'm like, wow, we really should learn a little bit more about this. So I really appreciate the opportunity today.
It is my pleasure. You guys are absolutely doing a great job. So thank you, Faith. Thank you, all of you, for listening. That's all the time we've got for today. Don't forget to find the Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition on Apple. Drop us a review. We'd love to know what you think about the show, about this episode, and who you'd like us to talk to next. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by Agorapulse, the #1 rated social media management solution. Discover more at agorapulse.com. Enjoyed the episode? Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Your feedback drives our content.